Greetings. So, I'm reading this book called Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. Picked it up at the thrift store. It's really big book. And it says the fates of human societies. I'm like, that sounds like a really big thing to talk about. And then it said winner of the Pulitzer Prize. And I'm like, that sounds important. And then it said the scope and the explanatory power of this book are astounding by the New Yorker. And I'm like, okay, you guys have convinced me. Bill Gates has a quote on the back. A professor from Stanford has a quote on the back. And I'm like, okay, y'all, I'll read it. So I start reading it and I start taking notes of what I learned. So in chapter 1, he mentions how the datings of everything he talks about might be different than like other sources that you might consume information from. I'm sorry, this isn't something that I've ever really done, like summarize what I've read out loud to myself. And my brain is kind of short wiring a bit. I'm gonna head to sleep after this too, but drinking a lot of water now. But so I didn't know this, but he said that there are calibrated dates and uncalibrated carbon dates, because that's how they date all the stuff before anything was written down and like remains, and like how old it is they figure out based on like the carbon particles in there. I'm not sure. I remember learning in chemistry how they calculate the age of, scratch that, like the half-life of a radioactive atom, and how you can tell by how long it's been decaying for. I feel like I'm not making sense. And that's the thing, it's harder to explain this stuff out loud than it is to read it and even write it down like in notes. I'm like, oh yeah, calibrated and uncalibrated carbon dates, obviously. And then now I'm trying to explain it to myself. And then I'm like, what the fuck does that even really mean? I'm gonna figure out what that means, because like, I'm so happy I'm writing down the information. Not only am I writing down the information, I'm reading the chapter, annotating it as I go, underlining comments. And then after I'm done the chapter, I go back and I read like the sections that I annotated and like between the lines, like kind of overviewing the chapter. Then I take notes and I am still confused. And I'm doing this video as like a fourth fucking reinforcer of information, because I don't want to read this book and just forget it, because what's the point of reading the book then? Like fiction, okay. Fiction is pretty easy actually to remember for me. I guess because I mostly read fiction. And it's like, well, this happened and then this happened and then, ooh, this happened. Da, 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 da. But this is just like human facts and information. And I never really learned like I had history obviously in school, but I never took an interest in it. So I don't know. This is just new to me. So 7 million years ago, apes split into gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans. And I did know that from my sociology, anthropology, psychology class. That's a really good class to have in high school. I'm really glad we had that. But the teacher of that class actually turned out to have AI porn on his computer, and I found that out recently. And I'm like, no. Like, I don't know. I hear about teachers in other schools being like weirdo pedophiles getting like fired, but teacher that I liked had AI porn on his computer, and he like obviously doesn't teach anymore. AI porn of another teacher, by the way. And he has a wife and kids, so people, man. I'm gonna drink more water. Okay, so we split off into gorillas, chimps, and humans, right? And, oh, I wrote from Africa to Asia took 6 million years. Because, you know, the monkeys, the gorillas, my boy. The gorillas, the chimpanzees, and the humans all came from Africa. And then it took the humans, I guess, that developed to get from Africa to, like, I guess, middle of Asia. Generally speaking, the book wasn't very specific. 6 million years. You know, I stop and think when I'm reading this book about the actual dates. And I'm like, 6 million years. Like, I try to let it sink in. All the monkeys that came before me, all the humans, all the weather, the storms, the animals. I wonder which. Isn't there the African Eve? That's like the woman that like every single human person is from? Mother Eve or something. You know what I'm talking about. New Zealand was the last to be populated. I mean, for obvious reasons, it is isolated as fuck. I did learn, oh, actually, this is interesting. I learned about the Bering Strait, and I didn't know what that was. And it's the bridge of dry land that connects Siberia to Alaska. So that's how people actually came from Asia. Like, they went from, well, for me, this is how the world looks like. It's probably reversed in the video. Is it? I don't know. So there's Africa, and then they came from Africa, they went to Asia, right? And they spent just a little quick 6 million years to get here. And then from Asia, they kind of kept expanding, and they came to Siberia, all the way on the east of the continent. And then there's a little thing of, I mean, it's not little, but thing of dry land that connected to Alaska, and then they populated all the Americas. But if there was no strip that connected them, literally who knows what would have happened. And the only reason there was a strip is because what was it? Because was it around the Ice Age? It has something to do with the Ice Age and how all the water was frozen to ice, so the sea level dropped like hundreds of feet. So all the land was actually that was underwater was actually above the water now. But right now, present day, this Bering Strait is shallow water because the sea level rose. And also probably because of climate change, because the glaciers melt and the sea level rises, you know. I'm trying really hard to like connect these ideas so like they kind of stay in my head. So that's really interesting. And I actually want to read about the Ice Ages because I don't know anything about the Ice Ages. Except the movie Ice Age with the squirrel in the nut. And Sid the Sloth. Thid the Sloth. Oh, it was also talking about how there's skeletal differences between Africans, West Eurasians, because it like makes Europe and Asian. Europe and Asia is one continent in the book, like in the early, you know, when. Whew. I'm like, maybe I should do this later, but I've been meaning to make this video for a while, so I'm just gonna make it. Okay. So, Europe and Asia are one continent. That's how the book writes about it. And so they found that there are differences in the skeletons between the people that were the remains of the people around this time. 100,000 years ago that they found. 100,000 years ago. I don't know why dates like actually like blow my mind. But they found that African remains were more similar to modern humans. Western Eurasian remains were Neanderthal ones. And East Asians are also different. It like didn't specify how, but these people already had physical differences after all this time of migrating and then being in those different places. They have physical differences. That's it. This book is really like matter of fact, just like being like, yes, this. Yes, this. And I guess that's history books. I like how this guy writes and how he presents the information. I mean, after I read, like for example, what did I say? Like he talks about New Zealand being the last to populate or something really basic. I mean, I think he's just giving the facts. And a lot of this stuff is pretty obvious to me. It's like, if this happened, then this happened, right? And then this had to have happened, right? And to me, like, some of the stuff he says is, like, redundant and pretty, like, yeah, obviously. But I feel like he just wants you to follow his train of thought for later in the book when it gets to more present day, I guess, more complicated human society things. So I'm bearing with him. I'm getting through this. Not even like I'm suffering. Like, not like I'm getting through this. Like, I'm reading through it. And I am doing my best to learn. Oh, there's the Cro-Magnons. Cro-Magnons? That's how you pronounce it. From Southwest Europe. And this was about 40,000 years ago. And they have developed, I guess they were one of the most developed peoples of that time that they found based on the remains. They had bone tools. I think they were the first people that actually took bones and made them into tools. They had bows and arrows. They made rope. They they made clothing. Jewelry and even artworks. Like, I think they had caves in the south of France that had statues or something like that. Like, they had time to make art. Then there's a question I wrote. Did one human population develop and expand to replace other human populations, or did many of them parallelly develop? And I think that kind of question that he asked is, like, pretty, to me at least, the answer was pretty obvious, is that different groups of people developed in parallel. And like, this is what I mean. It's like, why are you asking this question whether one person took over all of the people or if they were separate? Isn't it kind of obvious? But he's like, some people argue against it. I'm like, yeah, some people argue against and for everything. Like, I don't understand why you need to bring this up. And I guess he's trying to say, the core that I'm getting of this book so far is that he's trying to talk about why is it that it's the Europeans that colonized first? Why were they the powerhouse? Why were they the ones that had the resources, that had, like, you know, the guns and that imperialism? That, you know, why was it those groups of people? Why wasn't it the Africans? They were around longer than the Europeans. That's where the first people are from. Why wasn't it the Polynesians? They had they came up with boats before anyone did. Like, or why wasn't it, like, the people in North and South America that populated there? Like, they had a lot of resources. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So I understand, I guess, the question. It's like, was one population take over the rest and that's what was left? Or was it parallel? Again, this question, I'm moving on from this because I'm getting confused by my own words. Point is, I think the populations developed separately in different parts of the world, in case it's not obvious to people. Okay, at the time, 40,000 years ago. I mean, I wasn't there, but okay, so this was 40 to 30,000 years ago. Yeah, water was locked up in ice, so sea levels dropped, and many Indonesian islands were connected, but they still needed to travel a 50-mile channel to get to Australia and New Guinea. I think they were connected at the time. So this part of the chapter was talking about how Australia and New Guinea were colonized, discovered. Even though they think this was around 40,000 years ago, I'm not sure why. I think maybe the remains of something, but it says 13,000 years ago is the only evidence of boats. So they're like, how did people get to Australia? I don't know. I know that 13,000 years ago, There's evidence of boats there in the area. Not in Australia, but in the islands beside it. And that's how they traveled, I guess, the 50 miles to get to Australia. Imagine discovering, like, imagine discovering North America. Imagine crossing the Bering Strait and you're like, oh my god, I'm in Alaska. And then you start going south and south. And then you're in fucking Mexico and you're like, wow, this is actually kind of nice here. And then you end up in the Amazon rainforest and then you're like, what the fuck? That's a tarantula. Like, oh my god. I mean, I'm sure it's not the same freaking generation of people that came from Siberia to, like, I don't know, Brazil. But it's crazy. Conclusion, people got to Australia by accident. Yes, I'm sure. Now, wildlife in Australia before humans. There was a 1-ton lizard. There was a rhino-like marsupial. I was going to look up the word marsupial because I'm not sure what it means, but is it like mammal? I don't know. I'm not sure. 400-pound ostrich. That's nuts. They were all extinct when humans arrived. And they're not sure if it's like the humans that killed them or is it like the contact between them, germs. Hey, that's part of the book title. So the elimination of large animals left the people without animals to potentially domesticated. So it slowed down their development in the future compared to other societies. And by development, I mean possibility for agriculture, because, you know, if you domesticate animals, you can breed them for meat, for chickens for eggs. So yeah, because they weren't able to domesticate animals, that, I guess, slowed them down in a way. Now, Clovis sites. Sounds like a weird name. I agree. It's named after the remains of some humans they found in Mexico, and they found like really big spear points, like huge ones, and they're like, oh my god, this is significant. So they named that site a Clovis site, and they started naming all the other ones, I guess, in North America. Or in general, I'm not sure. Yes, America. They started naming all human remains sites in the Americas Clovis sites, like universally. I hope that's making sense. The sites document the first people that colonized the Americas. The sites are archaeologically similar to those found in other parts of the world where humans settled in the land. So that's important information because people argued, like, what if, like, the people just, like, were indigenous there? What if, like, humans somehow came out of monkeys or something in the Americas the same way they did out of Africa? But then archaeologists and people are like, no, because all of these human remains that we found, the only evidence of humans we have from here are similar to human remains that we found in other parts of the world that were colonized by people, that we know people came from a different place there. So we know that humans don't come from the Americas. We know that they came here, which I thought was actually pretty interesting. And my mouth is dry again. I'm trying to drink 2 of these a day. This is like almost 2 gallons. No, not gallons, liters. I'm trying to talk slower. I don't think that's happening in this video, but I'm like, if I slow down my speech, what would my life be like? And how would I intonate my words if intonation is a real word that applies in this scenario? What if I spoke simply? No backtracking, just my point. And all the thoughts that are kind of backtracky and trying to get me to mumble and rumble, I just don't say them. And I just keep going where I'm trying to speak. Okay, this part of the chapter is Americas. I was gonna combine chapter 1 and 2 into a video, but I don't think that's happening. So the Americas were, the remains were 11,000 BC. So that's like 13,000 years ago. The extinction dates of a ground sloth and mountain goat are within a century or two exact to the arrival of humans in the Grand Canyon. So did the humans kill them off, or did the environment change? And again, this is another time where Jared is asking some pretty, like, duh, why are you asking this questions? Because it's like, did the humans kill off the animals, or did the environment change if, like, the animals died off literally when the humans arrived? It's like, perhaps the humans killed them. Or, again, the germs of the humans or whatever they're carrying made the animals sick or something like that, but it's their contact that affected the animals. How do people argue that it's the environment? Like, oh, the environment changed. Environment meaning like the climate, or like, I don't know, ocean levels rising or something. Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? So people are so eager to find earlier proof of humans that false findings are common. And he went on like a little tangent talking about how there was one Clovis site where they were like, oh, we found the oldest humans in America, and it was actually 15,000 years ago and not 13,000 years ago. So suck it, archaeologists. I found the old remains, right? But then they like double checked them, triple checked them, and the carbon that they thought was older was actually remains from rocks or something 15,000 years ago that mixed in with human remains from 13,000 years ago. So they all mixed in together. So when they tested a sample of it and it was like 15,000 years ago, actually that's not true. And it's so like, I don't understand why this tangent was necessary for the progression of this book, because it's just talking about humans' ego and being like, they wanted to do the earlier, but there was it's like, I don't care. I'm trying to learn, like where do humans come from? Where are they going? How did they develop? And I guess he's pointing to the fact that like the dates can be off, which he already prefaced at the beginning. And I don't know why, there's just this little like part of me that gets annoyed by him and by this when he kind of goes off to the side talking about something like this, where it's like, I don't see how this is relevant. And this took up like a page. And I'm like, I read it, but I'm like, same thing with his questions that I've been talking about. So yeah, North and South America have the shortest human prehistories. And that's because, you know, it took them the longest time to get there. This is a question from the book I quoted. What significance, if any, do the continents' differing dates of settlements have for subsequent history? Did Africa get a head start? And then he was trying to explain, what does head start even mean? He's like, could head start mean how fast humans of the area adapted to the local conditions? In that case, the people in America adapted faster than in Africa, because when humans were evolving in Africa, like it took them, I don't even know how many millions of years, even after they were like, you know, they've separated from monkeys and they're very distinctly more close to humans, modern humans, that is. It still took them a lot more time to like develop tools, to develop some kind of like, I guess, society. Meanwhile, the humans that got to Americas were like boom, 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 boom compared to the Africans, and had societies, had tools, had whatever, and da 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 da. And now as I'm speaking out loud, I realized this is also a very obvious thing. Like, the reason the Americans were able to develop so fast is because they're standing on the shoulders of the evolution, the long evolution of the African people, who then moved to Eurasia, who then moved to fucking the Americas. So there's all this time that, whether they realize it or not, their brains are different now. Their everything is different because of all these years of all these people that came before them. So it's like, yes, the Americas got settled in faster, but that's only because of all the time that the humans took in Africa. It's not like, do you get what I'm getting at? It's like if we flip the script and humans came from the Americas, and let's say they spent like 5 million years developing from monkeys in the Americas, and then they go around the world, and another couple million years they end up in Africa. And then when they get to Africa, they adapt in less than 5 million years. And it's like, well, why did they do it so fast? It's like, because maybe they've been evolving as a species for such a long time before that they're like, you know, have a more developed brain and a more developed being. Like, I'm sorry, this kind of pisses me off, and I don't know if this is naive, if I'm being like too picky with this, but he was like, Southwest Europe developed pretty fast too, and it's like, why? Like the Cro-Magnon people, Cro-Magnon, like, because they developed bone tools, they developed yada yada, and it's like, I understand the question he's trying to like point to and answer here, and it's like, for example, why did Southwest Europe develop so fast and not Northwest? Like, what did it? And it's like, really, we don't know. And he says that. He's like, I don't know. At the beginning of the book, he's like, I don't know. This question is just like starting to point things in a direction. And it's great. It's great for history and like the information I'm learning. It's great. But it really doesn't feel like he's answering the question he's trying to answer in any way. Like, he's just giving information. Like, he's giving information and being like, it could be this. It could be this. What if it could be this? And it's like, yes, it could be fucking anything. But you're not contributing anything to make it lean in one way or the other. You're just being like, what if it's this? What if it's this? What if it's this? And it's like, again, that's really useful as like a history book. So then make it a history book. Don't like, because he tries to talk, especially in the intro, he's like talking it up like he's like, I didn't even realize this book pisses me off that much. But like at the beginning, he's trying to like talk himself up, like, you know, it takes like literally there's like a sentence where he's talking about how like it's a big feat to try and like condense so much information into a single book and answer this question. Because the reason kind of why he wrote this book is because he was studying birds in New Guinea. And there's this guy that he met named Yali. And Yali was like, why is it that white people have more things, well, more cargo, that's how he said it, more cargo than black people, or something like that. And like, how did it end up that they have more than we do? Let me pull up the question. Let me see, 1 second. Yeah, here. This is word for word what he said. Why is it that you white people developed so much cargo and brought it to New Guinea, but we black people had little cargo of our own? And so like, I understand what he's trying to do, but he's not doing it. And maybe it's too early to judge. Why did humans, he's trying to answer, why did human development proceed at such different rates on different continents? Yeah, maybe it's too early to judge this book, because there's a lot of really good stuff in here. So anyways, the conclusion of chapter 1. There was no way of predicting which human societies would develop most quickly. Yay, I'm glad I read a whole chapter. Okay, but seriously, I'm like, why did I read a whole chapter just to like, for him to say, I don't know, like there was no way of knowing? Well, like, you know, I learned something along the way. And that is what a Clovis site is. That is the Bering Strait. That is gorillas, chimpanzees, and humans. That is carbon dating that I still don't really understand. Calibrated versus uncalibrated. Why would you not want to calibrate it? Anyways. Yes. That is it. That is chapter 1. That took me 30 minutes for some reason. I finished chapter 2 today, so I was like, maybe I'll merge them. I guess not. I'll make chapter 2 tomorrow. I'm hungry. Maybe that's why I am so passionate and cranky. But peace. Expect chapter 2.